Welcome back to Speak Out. I am your host, Christine Yeargin, and today we are joined, I'm just going to jump right into it, because today we're joined by my boss. So I had to be on my best behavior in this episode. I kid, but actually she is a phenomenal woman. I have looked up to her long before I actually met her in person, and now I work for her. And if you're wondering where I work, Students for Life is who powers this podcast. They make sure I have the lights in the studio and the microphone and everything is edited afterward. So they are basically the backbone to this podcast and put everything together. And Kristan Hawkins is our guest today. She is the president of Students for Life, and she's a mom, a Christian, grassroots activist. She's an author, speaker. You've probably seen her around. If you pay attention to anything pro-life, you've probably heard of or seen Kristan Hawkins around. She actually has her own podcast powered by Students for Life as well, called Explicitly Pro-Life. So if you haven't listened to that one, I suggest you go do it. It is very educational. I listen to it all the time. I learn so many things from it and have listened to it before I even had my own podcast. So go check out Explicitly Pro-Life. She touches on it in this episode. You'll learn a little bit more about it. But she was recruited to help launch Students for Life and Students for Life Action. And since then, she's built up a small organization made up of a few dozen student groups scattered around the country to a coordinated national team that serves 1,200 plus Students for Life chapters in all 50 states. And this is on college, high school campuses everywhere, and has trained over 100,000 young people. I mean, that is huge. These are the next pro-life leaders. These are the people who are boots on the ground. They're going to protest. They're going to tell people about pro-life pregnancy centers that are abortion alternatives. They're safe, nonviolent abortion alternatives. And hang on, I have my daughter right here because she was really upset earlier. So let me, I feel like that's very real life. I'm a mom, I work, she's right here. I don't think you can see her, but we're pro-life around here. So we value babies, and sometimes babies come to work with us. She's got a lot to say about a lot of things. You're not going to regret listening to her or her podcast. But on today's podcast, we're really diving into young people and the way Planned Parenthood is targeting young people. We're talking about the fact that Planned Parenthood wanted to set up shop in a high school in California. Are you kidding me? In what world do you put a Planned Parenthood in a high school? Just unbelievable. We're talking about how to talk to your children about the issue of abortion, when to talk to them, how to encourage them to value life from a young age, which is pretty much inherent because kids, they see the ultrasound, they know that it's a baby, but fostering that knowledge and having them continue to value life. You're not going to want to miss today's episode. Whether you have kids, you're planning to have kids, you want kids in the future, it's going to be a phenomenal one. Let's check it out. Well, Kristan, thank you so much for joining us. I'm thrilled that you're here. I was able to film with you on your podcast, and now you're here on mine. Obviously, I know who you are. You're my boss, beloved boss, and leader of Students for Life. But for anybody listening,
I did not make you ask me to be a guest. So just for the record.
No, I wanted you to be a guest because you're also a mother and you're an expert on this topic anyway. But you're the leader of Students for Life. For anybody listening who might not know kind of your background, tell us why you're so passionate about the pro-life movement and really what got you started on this journey that you're on now.
Well, I actually got started in the pro-life movement when I was 15. A woman at my church had been serving as a part-time accountant at a pregnancy resource center. I was looking for a summer volunteer opportunity because I was a typical overachiever and trying to graduate high school early. And so I realized I needed to get a whole bunch of volunteer hours to graduate with honors, to be valedictorian next year. And so she said, hey, why don't you come to this women's center and you can be my intern. And something she failed to mention was that it was a pregnancy resource center and I was going to learn everything I needed to know about abortion. And, within an hour of walking into the center, of course, she wasn't even there my first day. The center volunteers were so excited to have me because, I was, a young person coming in to volunteer for them. And they really wanted to take advantage of my youth and train me to be a counselor for those women coming in. So I have kind of a unique perspective, because I think a lot of times when young people go into a pregnancy center to volunteer, they're told, mow the lawn, paint the building, organize the supply room, which I created an amazing new inventory for the supply room. I did do this intern tasks, but I was also given this wider opportunity to learn how to counsel women coming into the center. So that's how I got my start. I had never really gotten the birds and bees talk from my parents. I obviously knew what sex was by 15, but we didn't really ever talk about the hard things about abortion. And so I think, if you would have asked me as 15-year-old Kristin, who wanted to go to become an aeronautical engineer, wanted to work for NASA, I would have probably fallen into that. I wouldn't have an abortion, but then I also saw abortion as like that parachute of, well, if something happens, there's always this thing. And so kind of in that mushy middle where a lot of people find themselves. And so it was really there at the pregnancy center where I learned about the violence of abortion. They had me watch, all of, back in the day, there were VHS videos, and you watched VHS videos. And so I remember watching The Silent Scream, the video from Bernard Nathanson, co-founder of NARAL, Pro-Choice America, later became pro-life, and showed the world via a 2D black and white ultrasound what happens in abortion, and watching his video, reading the pamphlets. And from there, everything grew out of, going back to high school, my junior/senior year, starting a Students for Life group. I called it Teens for Life. All the controversy that ensued in my small, blue-collar conservative town from just starting a pro-life group, and then going to college and doing the same and falling in love with politics and getting involved, all because I started that first day at the pregnancy center.
I love that. Do you still talk to the people at that pregnancy center? Does it still exist, or have you moved on?
Yeah, the pregnancy center still exists. I actually keynoted their fundraiser a couple of years ago. The director who I became very close to, going into my junior/senior year of college, I actually was the center executive director for like a month when the executive director went out of the country. And so I served with them all through college. But yeah, I haven't spoken with the new center director yet. I was actually earlier today writing down, we're heading back, as many people know, we travel the country full time, but we're heading back in the camper/RV to the Pittsburgh area for a couple months this fall. And so I was writing down sign up Gunner and Bear to volunteer at AIM Pregnancy Center STAT, because my kids need to get some service into them.
Yeah. That's cool that you have your kids doing the same thing. And I'm sure that pregnancy center is we helped create Kristan Hawkins. Everybody, you can thank us. We pushed her into this movement. So you've seen the pro-life movement change and the abortion industry change over the years, and how they've targeted people and how it's gone from safe, legal, and rare. But now it's everybody love and celebrate abortion. It's this joyous thing to them now. I want to mention, this is insane to me. Literally, these people are certifiably insane. They were talking about putting in California a Planned Parenthood clinic inside of a high school. Yeah. A clinic inside of the high school. I want to read a little bit. According to a Newsweek article, the clinic staff would not be permitted to offer abortion or gender-affirming hormone therapy, but the staff would be permitted to make referrals to other Planned Parenthood centers for services that are not offered there. So essentially, they don't do it at the school. They just tell you where to go if you need it. And then it says the clinic services would include physical examinations relevant to reproductive health, diagnosis and treatment of STDs, and insertion of non-surgical IUD type things, contraception. The clinic would also be able
just things that can kill you.
Right. The clinic would also be able to write prescriptions and dispense pharmaceuticals. And though they encourage parents to be involved under California's laws, parents don't have to know about this. Did you ever think that you would see the day where they're trying to put a Planned Parenthood inside of a flippin' high school?
I don't know. I guess I never thought about that way, but I guess I'm not surprised. I mean, these are people who literally wake up in the morning and think, how can I entice more young people to end the life of their child? And so their motivations are a little wacko to begin with. In one of my previous podcasts, I was interviewing Elizabeth Johnston, and it was interesting and horrifying that she said that they had uncovered in Indiana, in freaking red Indiana, a plan for the school system where they were teaching children how to get to the Planned Parenthood using public transportation, using the bus system, and what routes you would have to take, what stops you'd have to get off on. So you didn't have to tell your parents that you're going to Planned Parenthood. And this is their entire predatory cycle. This is why, a lot of people don't know the group SECUS, which was founded in 65, which, the medical director of Planned Parenthood, Mary Calderon, was one of the founders. Actually, she was one of the ones in the 50s, late 50s, that admitted that abortions weren't unsafe. I use some of her testimonials when I'm speaking to students about the myths of Roe America and this, in the back alley abortion myth. But SECUS is an organization most people have never heard about, but they're the ones running the show when it comes to sex education in many of our public school systems out there. And so once you start peeling back, it's definitely an onion, and it stinks to high heavens because it just keeps getting worse and worse.
I want to be clear that abortions, not only in the life of babies, but they sometimes in the life of their mothers as well. And so we're talking about, as parents, you're a parent, I'm a parent, say our kids are in regular public school and they're getting this indoctrination and manipulation. We're talking about our grandchildren. We're talking about our children possibly being harmed from abortion and having all sorts of issues afterward. We're talking about, not just abortion, but now gender hormone therapy, and they're wanting to get this to the children without talking to us. But the teachers and certainly the Planned Parenthood clinic is not going to pick up the pieces when things fall apart after that. We see them targeting kids younger and younger, and they're handing out condoms in 5th grade. They're telling middle schoolers how to get abortions with their parents' consent. I mean, how do we combat this in a way that is preventative, that we're getting to the kids beforehand instead of having to kind of chase the narrative that Planned Parenthood is shoving down their throat?
I get asked this question a lot. I actually have covered this a couple of times on my podcast, Explicitly Pro-Life, which all of you should be subscribing to, hopefully.
Yes, you should.
Because this is something that we get asked about a lot. And as a parent of 4 children, 1 teen, 1 preteen, I think about this a lot. I think, for us as parents and anyone who's considering becoming a parent, I think you have to understand you need to speak early and often to your young people before you even think you should have to about abortion, about these other important issues, because you have to realize if you do not speak to your young people, they will do your job for you. I mean, literally, Planned Parenthood is on her phone, is on his phone. They're trying to get to your kids. They want to have conversations, and they want to become the trusted source of information in your child's life. And so the best way you can, head that off is by you having the conversations, you keeping that line of communication open where your child can come and ask any question, even if it's a little uncomfortable or awkward, can ask that question of you. I think it's important very early on, before you even start having a conversation about abortion, is talking about there is absolute truth out there. Truth is not objective. Subjective. It is objective. And I think that's really important because, we see this all the time. I mean, we're redefining what a woman is. We have a presidential administration who's trying to redefine what a recession is. I mean, they're literally just inventing terms at this point. We need to show our kids that there is objective truth and there is right and wrong, and some things are very clear. We can have different opinions about things, but there are facts. And the fact is, at the moment of conception, unique, whole, living human life comes into existence that has never existed before and will never exist again. That is a scientific, undisputed fact. That is objective truth. I think the other thing we can do as parents, as you can tell, I think about this a lot, is model, our beliefs. Getting your kid involved,
Absolutely.
going with you to pray in front of the abortion facility or serving women. I think this is important to get them involved because, so often when we're starting Students for Life groups and we have a group, for example, that's having difficulty getting approved on a campus, I'll tell the Students for Life leaders, go and pray in front of the abortion facility. Or, if you're not religious, just stand there and, hope for the best. But stand there and witness the hurt, witness the devastation. And you can save a life by being a witness out there in front of the abortion facility. But I think you get fed being there because I think it deepens your resolve to speak out against this horror.
I love that advice. You have your own kids doing it. You're not just like telling us what to do. You actually are talking about having your kids go volunteer at a pregnancy center. And you're right. When you go to these Planned Parenthoods or abortion facilities, you witness a lot of hurt. You witness a lot of confusion. I remember being outside of one. I was actually with Students for Life and in Washington, D.C., and there was a young woman who went in, and I was talking to her, and I could tell that she was taking in what I was saying, and then her boyfriend came up behind her a couple minutes later, and her complete attitude changed. She kind of blocked me out, wouldn't listen to me anymore, and I could tell that she was being pressured and forced, and I just was bawling my eyes out because I felt like I couldn't fix the issue fast enough. And they both went inside, and it was really tough. But I think we need to see that in order to see what we're up against and see that these women don't necessarily want to go in there. They feel like it's their only option, or they're being pushed to go in there. I know you have a teenager and a preteen. You just said I have a teenager myself, and then I have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. But I wanted to talk about the fact that, I mentioned it before, they're targeting kids younger and younger, and there's a book out now, which we've probably touched on a couple of times within Students for Life, but it's titled, What's an Abortion Anyway? And one of the people involved in the creation of this book is a they/them named Emulsify. That tells you anything. But
wait, what? What? Repeat that for the slow people.
So one of the people, there's 2 people who created the book, one who wrote it and one who did the art. The person who did the art is a they/them. They identify as they/them, and their name is Emulsify.
A they/them. Okay.
Yes, is a they/them named Emulsify, which I feel like that, or calls themselves an Emulsify. Anyway, What's an Abortion is a medically accurate. This is what they say, not I say. A medically accurate, non-judgmental, and gender-inclusive resource for young folks about abortion care. In this book, you'll learn about what an abortion is, some of the reasons people have abortions, and a few of the ways people might feel about their abortions. And then in their GoFundMe or their Kickstarter campaign, they go on to say, we believe in building a world for kids and adults where abortion is normalized as another outcome of pregnancy, just like miscarriage and birth. Having this book in children's section of libraries next to all of the books about pregnancy is one of the ways we hope to do that. They're not only are they targeting high schoolers, by putting Planned Parenthood in the clinics, or middle schoolers by saying, hey, here's how you have an abortion without the consent of your parents. They're targeting toddlers. I mean, these are children's books with colorful images, and they're targeting toddlers. Why are they doing that?
And I can bet you the thing that they leave out in that book is the gestational development of a human being.
Anything
I haven't read
actual.
it. But I can pretty much guarantee they're not going to go over what it is who an abortion actually destroys.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that because, of course, it doesn't in the book. Mm-hmm. But my kids, if they see an ultrasound, they know that it's a baby. And ultrasounds are blurry, they're not a vivid picture like I can see you right now. They're blurry and just kind of like a foggy image. Mm-hmm. And my kids say, that's a baby. That's a baby. Mm-hmm. They know it from, 10 weeks, 11 weeks, 12 weeks. You can see that's a baby. And for whatever reason, they have to hide that from children in order to manipulate them to support abortion.
Yeah. I mean, the thing you have to realize, too, is they have to convince children not to be pro-life, because I think naturally every human being starts out life being against abortion. Pro-life. I don't know any child who hears the word abortion, hears what abortion is like, yes, That's women's empowerment. Yes, I'm for that. Every child's like, why would someone do that? Why would a mommy choose to do that? I mean, my kids would ask, why would a mommy do that? You know, they don't understand of why someone would ever do that to another human being. And so this is just part of their larger conversion process. I mean, at Students for Life, you know, we measure, you know, we're a $20 million organization with nearly 100 team members. So we're doing a lot in any given day. There's different, you know, teams doing different things, whether it's at high school and college campuses, or it's online, if it's in communities with churches, we're doing a lot. But everything we do is measured. I'm a big numbers person, but it's measured with goals in 3 areas. And the goals have to do one of 3 things. They have to produce conversations, or they have to produce conversions, or the actions or goals have to produce activations, because that's what we do. We need to, you know, we really see, you know, our niche is finding this army in the pro-life movement that can go out and serve in all the different niches throughout the movement to eventually get us to a point where abortion is unthinkable and unavailable. But we have to produce conversations. We have to go out and have conversations, because having conversations produces conversions, produces activations. And that's exactly why that book was written, to have that conversation, to be the first person to have that conversation with a young person.
So when it comes to the issue of abortion and children that they're targeting now, I have a 14-year-old. He knows what abortion is, learned about it when he was 11. Unfortunately, he learned about it
has his own Instagram account, by the way.
He does, the Pro-Life Kid, which I help run. I don't just give him free access to Instagram for all the parents who are going to come for me. But he came to me at 11 and asked me what abortion was. So I obviously was too late there when he came to ask me. And granted, when I told him, much like you just mentioned, he was like, why would anybody do that? I don't understand. And now my daughters are 3 and 6. And what they know is that we just help moms and babies. They're a little bit, I feel like maybe a little too young right now to explain the actual abortion process to them. But for you, what ages were your children? What age did you suggest to have this conversation? I'm sure it'll be different for everybody, but
yeah, I mean, it's definitely different for everybody. And just words of wisdom. I, Kristan Hawkins, never read a parenting book, so I am not an expert. I do not. Yes, I have 4 children, and yes, they seem all to be reasonably sane, but I don't think of myself as a parenting expert. All of my children have known pretty early on what abortion is. Now, the detail is a little fuzzy, but even, you know, Gracie, who's my youngest right now, is 7. She's known what abortion is for probably a good year and a half. And it's, you know, when mommies don't want to be pregnant anymore. And so, they let somebody kill the baby in their belly. And that's really how it's described. And I mean, this is not a fun conversation to have with a child. And so, you know, we talk about it a little bit. She hears it. My children hear it more than I think the normal family is probably not talking about abortion as much as I'm talking about, because I talk about it all day long, every day. I think it kind of depends on, you know, the child's interest. So like my second son, Bear, has never once asked me what an abortion is. He's never asked me why women have abortions. My oldest son, Gunnar, he straight up asked, what is abortion? What happens in abortion? Why would mommies do that? Who's letting that happen? I mean, if you go to my children and mention the words Barack Obama or Joe Biden to my children, they will probably have some choice words because, you know, they hear me talking about politics and how it intersects in the pro-life movement, which the pro-life movement is not a political movement. It's a human rights movement, but we fight in politics to see advances, to save lives. And so, I remember my son, Gunnar, he'd be like, why does Barack Obama want to kill babies? I mean, I should have just put that kid on a campaign commercial because, it's hard for them to understand. Why is this powerful person okay with killing babies? And so Gunnar asked a lot more questions. Bear and I have never had the discussion. He's 11 about what abortion is. Gunnar and I, when he was 10, I actually filmed myself. I already told Gunnar what abortion was, but I had fetal models and some abortion tools, and I filmed myself explaining it to Gunnar. And it was really interesting because I don't remember we'd have to go back in the Students for Life YouTube archives for this, but I explained it to him, and then Gunnar said something. He was really into Minecraft at the time. He said he compared abortion to something about killing and respawning people or characters in Minecraft. And I was like, in the video, you'll see me be like, oh, yeah. And I had no idea what he was talking about. And someone watched it and was like, oh, my gosh, your kid totally got it. And they were like, explain to me this part of Minecraft. So it was interesting. As a 10-year-old, he was able to kind of relate it to something that happened in the video game, in Minecraft. So, yeah, I think it kind of just depends on the kids. But you know, I think the first thing you want to do is impose upon your children at the earliest age you can. And you do this by showering your kids with hugs and kisses, their value and their preciousness and the value of every human life. That is the easiest way, right? And the most important thing to do, because that's something that as they get older and go out into the world, that's what culture is like crushing down at them, that they're worthless, their lives have no value, they're here by accident. And it's sadly, this is manifesting itself today. Like, one of the things that I have been probably the most unprepared to answer on campuses is when I'm having a dialogue with someone about abortion, they'll tell me, well, I wish I was aborted and I wish I were dead. So I think other people, it's totally fine if they have an abortion. And we're talking with deeply wounded people. And so I think that's the first step, is educating our children about their value and that they were created in the image of an all-powerful God who spoke the world into existence. Their life has meaning. Their life has purpose. And even when it's hard, it's never going to stay the same. It can always get better. And then you can start educating about fetal development and the baby in mommy's stomach, or the baby in your sister and her aunt's stomach. You can start having that discussion, and then you move to the gruesome, violent reality of abortion.
You actually brought up my next question, because I was going to say, what resources would you, or kind of touch on it, would you suggest to teach our children the value of life? Because that's something that they're not learning. You're right. They have to know that they are inherently valuable, and they're just as valuable as the neighbor down the street and the trash truck driver and the president of the United States, even if we disagree with him. Everybody is inherently valued. Their value doesn't come from whether or not we agree with them or what we have an opinion about that, related to the person. That value comes from God.
There's a couple of resources. I interviewed recently Elizabeth Johnson on my podcast, Explicitly Pro-Life. Have you subscribed yet? I don't know. You should. And she has a book, Little Lives Matter.
Pause this. Go subscribe.
Yes. Little Lives Matter. And it's a really cute book. I had her read part of the book on the podcast episode. It's actually a lot cuter than I thought. Sometimes when people are like, hey, I have a pro-life book or a pro-life movie or pro-life song, I'm like, oh gosh, not another one. It's actually like high quality, legit, good. You can go to bravebooks.com. She said they don't sell on Amazon for obvious reasons, but it's actually a really good book, and it seems very age appropriate. I'm actually going to get it for my children. The other resource I've seen is one of my favorite organizations that I support is called Healing the Culture. And it takes a book written by a Jesuit Catholic priest who has a show on E-10, Father Spitzer, who is, I don't know, philosopher and physicist by trade, one of the smartest people you ever meet. And he wrote a book years and years ago, The 10 Universal Principles of Happiness. And in all fairness, I've tried to read through the book. It's too dense for me. I feel like I've become less, having 4 children, I have less attention span for reading in-depth books. But what Healing the Culture has done is taken this book, which is founded on biblical truths, and has created a curriculum. They have a curriculum for high school students, middle school students, and my favorite is a curriculum for elementary students, which is like puppets. They're called Philo and Sophie. It's like philoandsophie.com. And it is so good because it talks about the 4 levels of happiness that you as a person can achieve. And, serving God is that highest level of happiness. Serving others is, level 3 of happiness. And then the lowest level of happiness is serving self. And so it helps, I think, young people without talking. You don't even have to talk about abortion, because once you understand these 4 principles of happiness, you can take any of these worldview, big cultural questions, smash them up against this way of thinking, and the young person, and they have all the stats and the schools to prove, once you learn this, you're like, wait a minute, abortion is low level happiness. It's serving self. It's not serving others. It's certainly not serving God. It's serving a temporary need that I have. And so I absolutely love it because it doesn't, you don't have to get into the nitty gritty of every issue. You don't have to talk about assisted suicide right away or, gay marriage, or there's a lot of different issues that we can talk about, especially as Christians. You can apply it using this way of thinking, using philosophically sound arguments and theologically sound arguments.
Knowing kids and teenagers and the way kids are today, we need more of that. So thank you for sharing that as a resource, because now I'm going to go look it up. My kids are totally doing this. Like the curriculum, I had her come to my house and I was like, tell it to me like I'm 15. Just explain this to me like I'm 15. Yeah. So I've actually read through the whole high school curriculum. I have the high school curriculum for myself, and my sons will start going through it very soon. Well, I'm going to look into that for my kids. Elizabeth Johnston's book is really cute. I do have that. I think there's another one called like ABC, like Pro-Life ABCs or something like that, which is a pretty cute book too. It's not a story so much.
Bethany Baumberger has a book too, Pro-Life Kids. I haven't read it, but it looks really cute.
Now, I do have that one. I felt like it was maybe for a little bit of older kids. Like I started reading it to my 3-year-old, and I was like, maybe I read it to like my 8 or 9-year-old, or have them read it to me. But it's a great book too, and everybody has kids of different ages. So I think that's beneficial. But speaking of younger generations, I kind of want to touch on Students for Life here before we go. What makes you optimistic about the younger generations? You work with kids every single day, and I say kids, but I mean, high schoolers, college students, even adults who sometimes act like kids. But you work with them every single day. What makes you optimistic about what we have to look forward to with the pro-life generation?
Well, I think the thing I would say this generation is filled with such amazing servant heart young people. Like the people that we are able to serve in Students for Life, whether they're Students for Life leaders in their chapters, their fellows, their Students for Life action captains. I meet these young people and I am constantly blown away about how much better of human beings they are than myself. I'm like the worst human being at Students for Life. I mean, these are the most courageous, self-sacrificing young people. It's unbelievable. I'm constantly blown away when I get to kind of sit down and actually have a real conversation. Just their heart, their story, why they do this work. Why do they listen to a crazy person like Kristan who comes up with these harebrained schemes that curses too much? Like, why do they listen to me and what I say? Like, it constantly blows my mind that we have these people who are like, yes, I think she's on to something. I'm going to listen to what she said. It completely blows my mind. Like, I will go to events and I don't know. It blows my mind when people will come up to me and are like, I love your podcast. I watched every video and listened to every episode. And I feel so bad for them. Like, you have to be so sick of my voice. I hate the sound of my voice. So I think that gives me hope to see this movement is going to be led by people so much better than me in the future. I think the other thing that really gives me hope too, and what I've been really reflecting upon, and if I were in graduate school right now, I would love to go get my PhD. It would be so much fun. I would get so kicked out of graduate school, but I just don't have time to do this because I'm like trying to, end abortion. But when I'm studying social movements, I've been kind of digging into different social movements and how do you keep, momentum going along sustained campaigns? Because that's what we've really entered in the pro-life movement. We've entered phase 2. We've reversed Roe, but now we actually have to, you think about end of slavery to the Civil Rights Act. That was 99 years. We can't spend 99 years, but I do think it's going to be a long time before we see abortion completely abolished in our land. And so how do we sustain all this momentum? How do we keep people excited? How do we, what strategies do we focus on here versus later? What tactics do we employ? But one of the things that has been really interesting to me, and like I said, I wish I could measure this, is the impact of having whole states now. We have 7 states that I know of that have no abortion facilities. Indiana just passed a law, which I'm not very happy about because the pro-life leaders totally caved and the entire pro-life movement is upset about it. But it will save 95% of babies, so yay, victory, but not as good as Indiana should have done. Let me just put it that way. Sure. You're going to have states now where children are being born. We've had 3 Students for Life babies born. Go figures, a pro-life organization with a bunch of women. We have babies all the time. The maternity plans are killing me with staff shortages. That's another episode. Totally pro having babies, but it really hurts when you're trying to abolish abortion and your staff keep having babies and they can't work. But keep having babies. But it's interesting because I was thinking about these children, these 3 little babies, and I was telling our director of operations, we need new onesies. We have pro-life generation onesies, blue and pink. We don't have a transgender one, sorry. I want to do I am a post-Roe generation onesies. And I was thinking about these children that are going to be born in states. We think there'll be about 26 states that, once they get their act together and the Republicans stop betraying us and do the right thing and stop worrying about elections or what the pollsters are saying or what the consultants are saying, once they do the right thing, we should have 26 states that ban all or mostly all abortions. So you are going to have children being born in states where their entire lives are going to go by and they are never going to consider abortion as backup birth control. Or that parachute, and I don't like abortion, but if something happens, they're going to always know abortion's wrong. Yeah. And I don't think we as a pro-life movement have fully calculated how that's going to change our culture, how that's going to transform our work in the future for the better. And it gives me such hope when I think about these children who, I've always lived in a world until June 24th. I've always lived in a world where abortion was a legal option. I was always told throughout school that this was a legal, available option. And, we've been force-fed this lie that this is somehow empowering to women. But now that's not going to be the case. And that is why, to be honest with you, Christine, the left is freaking out about Roe being reversed. Because a lot of people in the conservative movement were like, why are you yelling? You live in California. Gavin Newsom is the abortion superhero and is making his state,
That's where they rioted the most.
Yeah, abortion's for everyone, even if you're not even a woman and can't get pregnant. You can have an abortion too. I mean, he's doling out. What's that meme where it's Oprah giving out stuff on her giveaway days, right? That's literally California right now when it comes to abortion. So some people and a lot of conservative commentators have been like, this isn't a big deal. It's going back to states. But it is a big deal. I mean, it's obviously a big deal to us in the movement, but it's a big deal to them too. Because they understand what sometimes we fail to do in conservative politics and the conservative movement, political movement as a whole, is to understand that this is a powerful cultural change that now we are undergoing. And that's going to have long-lasting effects. So sorry, long answer to a short question.
No, it's great. Thank you for the long answer. Children are going to grow up valuing life like they inherently do from birth. They see an ultrasound, they know it's a baby, they value baby, They know that you're gentle and loving and kind and compassionate to a baby. And then they're going to see that abortion is wrong in their state. And they're going to say, well, why is it wrong? Why do we not allow it? And then they're going to be forced to really think about that. Instead of just thinking, oh, abortion is legal, it's totally fine, I can have that as my backup plan. They're absolutely forced to think about it on a deeper level and really think about life as a whole. Kristan, before I let you go, I know you've had a super busy day. If you could tell everyone, I told you I ended my podcast with this same question every time. If you could tell everybody listening one piece of advice that would encourage them to speak out, whether it's on the issue of abortion or whether it's on something near and dear to their heart, maybe it's the gender ideology stuff that we're fighting, or any belief that they have, what piece of advice would you give them to encourage them to speak out?
I think if you're struggling with how to speak out or if you should speak out and overthinking the consequences, stop overthinking everything and just do it. I would say, the activist mindset is a very powerful one. And one of the activist rule of thumb is, ask for forgiveness, not permission. But I would say, get out and do something. Even if you're too afraid to put the bumper sticker in your car or show the post, go and pray in front of an abortion facility. Just show up by yourself. You don't have to hold a sign. I'm not asking you to wear a pro-life t-shirt if you're not comfortable with it yet. If you are, Students for Life has great merchandise. but just go out and witness it for yourself. I think going out to the sidewalk, I think showing up at the pregnancy center and just, offering to clean the floors or, paint the house or mow the lawn. I think surrounding yourself with the violence of abortion will give you that added oomph, that courage to do those first words and to speak out. It's also important to know, once you do it once, it gets really easy. It gets a lot easier after you take the first step. The first step is always the hardest. I mean, I know Christine, you and I were door knocking in Denver for our Abortion Free Cities campaign in that neighborhood surrounding the abortion facility. And, it's hard to on a Saturday afternoon, walk up to complete strangers and be like, hey, let me talk to you about abortion. Not something people want to talk about. And so every time I do door knocking, whether it's for a candidate or it's just, with Abortion Free Cities and we're talking about supportive services, it's hard those first couple houses. And then by the end of the day, you're having conversations with everyone. People are telling you their ovulation schedules. There's all kinds of information you never wanted to know about people. You have been told. And it's just another door, not a problem. It's the first one that's always the hardest.
It does get easier. You're without a doubt 100% right. When we were door knocking, I actually was nervous about it because I've never been door knocking before. And then once we did it, I was like, oh, this isn't so bad. I can do it. Because at first I was like, no, somebody come with me to the store. I don't know if I can do it by myself. And then eventually I was like, oh, I got this. Let's talk to them. Yeah. We'll talk about their kids. We'll talk about their grandma. Whatever they want to talk about, we'll talk about. Kristan, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It has been a joy as always. Again, if you guys have not checked out Explicitly Pro-Life, go and subscribe right now. And you'll probably be seeing more Kristan on my podcast in the future. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Christine.